The evening lights of Seoul filtered through the large windows of the Blue Moon Cafe, casting long shadows across Ji-yoon's table. She sat alone, her untouched Americano growing cold as she stared at the bustling city outside. The cafe occupied the 10th floor of a modern building in Gangnam, offering a panoramic view of the city's glittering skyline. Tonight, however, the spectacular view failed to lift her spirits. And if you want a handsome CEO in your life and love videos like this, subscribe to our channel to have 10 years of luck in your life. Her phone lay face down on the marble table, still displaying the message that had shattered her world just hours ago. The breakup text arrived without warning, ending a 2-year relationship with clinical precision. The timing made it worse. Tomorrow was supposed to be her 27th birthday celebration with him. As she watched people hurrying along the streets below, memories invaded her thoughts unbidden. Last summer, they had walked those same streets together, stopping at food stalls and laughing about nothing in particular. The memory of his smile felt like a cruel joke now. They had spent countless evenings planning their future in this very cafe. He always ordered the same drink, an iced Americano with an extra shot of espresso, and would absent-mindedly draw patterns in the condensation on his glass while they talked. Their relationship had started right here, when he accidentally spilled his coffee on her favorite white blouse. He had been so apologetic, insisting on paying for dry cleaning and offering to buy her dinner as compensation. That dinner turned into regular meetings, which evolved into dating. The Blue Moon Cafe became their special place, where they celebrated anniversaries and shared dreams. Now, sitting alone at their usual table, every corner of the cafe seemed to mock her with memories. The barista behind the counter gave her sympathetic glances. She had become a regular here over the years, and her solitary presence tonight told its own story. The soft jazz playing through the speakers, once romantic background music for their dates, now felt like a melancholic soundtrack to her heartbreak. Through the cafe's entrance, Lee Min-ho stepped in, his tall figure commanding attention despite his attempt to remain inconspicuous. As the CEO of a successful tech company, he had learned to move through spaces without drawing unnecessary attention. His eyes immediately found Ji-yoon. He had known she would be here. This cafe was visible from his office building, and he had noticed her sitting alone for the past 2 hours. Min-ho paused at the entrance, observing how Ji-yoon's shoulders slumped forward, her usual confident posture replaced by defeat. He had known her since university, where they shared several classes together. Over the years, he watched from a distance as she built her career and relationship, never finding the right moment to express his own feelings. The sight of her alone on the eve of her birthday stirred something in him. He had always been the reliable friend, the successful businessman who seemed to have everything figured out. But watching Ji-yoon's evident pain made all his achievements feel hollow. Her ex-boyfriend's departure had created a void, and Min-ho found himself questioning whether he should maintain his distance or finally take a chance. The cafe's warm lighting cast a soft glow on Ji-yoon's face, highlighting the traces of tears she had tried to hide. Min-ho noticed how she kept glancing at her phone, perhaps hoping for a different message, an explanation, or an apology that wouldn't come. The city lights behind her created a halo effect, making her look both fragile and beautiful in her sadness. Making his decision, Min-ho approached the counter first, ordering 2 hot chocolates. He remembered how Ji-yoon always said that hot chocolate was better than coffee for healing a broken heart, a detail he had filed away years ago during one of their casual conversations. As he waited for the drinks, he began formulating a plan. Tomorrow was her birthday, and he refused to let her spend it dwelling in sadness. The barista prepared the drinks with practiced efficiency, adding extra marshmallows without being asked. Perhaps she too had witnessed enough heartbreak in this cafe to know exactly what the situation called for. Min-ho thanked her with a quiet nod, gathering his courage as he turned toward Ji-yoon's table. He knew this moment could change everything, their friendship, their dynamic, potentially their futures. The distance between the counter and her table felt longer than usual, each step carrying the weight of years of unspoken feelings and careful friendship. Min-ho understood that his next actions would need to balance between being a supportive friend and someone who might, someday, be more. As he approached, he noticed Jiyoon quickly wiping her eyes, trying to compose herself for whoever was approaching her table. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Minho's office as he paced back and forth, phone pressed to his ear. Harry's voice came through clearly, her tone shifting from surprise to excitement as he outlined his impromptu plan for Jiyoon's birthday party. "You want to organize an entire birthday party by tonight?" Harry asked, the sound of her shuffling papers in the background suggesting she was already taking notes. As Jiyoon's best friend since high school, she understood the significance of Minho's gesture. "The rooftop venue at River Plaza might be available. I know the events manager there." Minho stopped his pacing, looking out over the Seoul skyline. From his office, he could see the Han River winding through the city, its waters reflecting the morning light. "Book it immediately. Money isn't an issue. I want the best view of the river, the best catering, everything perfect." He pulled up his calendar on his computer, canceling all his afternoon meetings without hesitation. 20 minutes later, Minho and Harry met at a quiet cafe near the River Plaza. Unlike the elegant Blue Moon Cafe, where Jiyoon had spent her evening, this was a cozy space filled with the aroma of fresh pastries. Harry arrived with her tablet and a determined expression, her marketing executive experience evident in how quickly she had assembled preliminary plans. "I've started a guest list," Harry began, sliding her tablet across the table. "These are the people who matter most to Jiyoon. I've included her college friends, some colleagues from work, and that art group she joined last month." She paused, studying Minho's face carefully. "Are you sure about this, Minho? This isn't just about a birthday party, is it?" Minho took a sip of his coffee, considering his response. "I've watched her build her life for years, Harry. Always supporting from the sidelines, always being the reliable friend. Yesterday, seeing her so broken." He trailed off, remembering Jiyoon's tears at the cafe. "She deserves to know she's not alone." They spent the next hour finalizing details. Harry's connections in event planning proved invaluable as she made call after call, securing everything from fairy lights to a live jazz band. Minho insisted on personal touches. He remembered Jiyoon once mentioning her love for paper lanterns and how they reminded her of hope floating in the darkness. By early afternoon, Minho stood on the rooftop of River Plaza, overseeing the transformation of the space. Workers moved efficiently, stringing lights across the open area while others arranged elegant tables and comfortable seating areas. The view was breathtaking. The Han River stretched out before them, and the city skyline created a perfect backdrop for what he hoped would be a memorable evening. The event's manager walked him through the setup, pointing out where the band would perform and where they would arrange the food stations.
Minho ad.
Dead specific requests, a quiet corner with cushioned seats where people could have intimate conversations, a designated area for the lantern release he had planned, and subtle heating elements to keep guests comfortable in the evening air. As he walked the space, Minho found himself imagining Jiyoon's reaction. Would she appreciate the gesture, or would it overwhelm her? He knew she was still raw from the breakup, and part of him worried that such a grand celebration might be too much, too soon. But another part of him, the part that had waited years for the right moment, knew that sometimes healing began with being surrounded by love and friendship. Harry joined him on the rooftop later, carrying samples of the cake she had ordered. The pastry chef asked about Jiyoon's preferences. "I remembered she loves strawberry shortcake," she said, setting down the samples. "Minho, we need to talk about how we're getting her here. She's not in a celebrating mood, and you know how she gets when she's hurt. She'll want to hide away." Minho nodded, having already considered this challenge. "That's where you come in. You're taking her shopping this afternoon, remember? A distraction, something to get her mind off everything. Then you'll bring her here." He paused, looking out over the river again. "I've asked the band to start with that song she always hums when she's happy, the one from that drama she made us all watch last year." The afternoon wore on as final preparations fell into place. Guests confirmed their attendance, understanding the need for secrecy. The catering team arrived to set up, bringing with them the aromas of Jiyoon's favorite foods. Minho had remembered every detail she had ever mentioned in passing, from her preference for spicy tteokbokki to her love of fresh fruit desserts. Standing on the rooftop as the sun began its descent, Minho felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. Everything was coming together perfectly, but the success of the evening wouldn't be measured in the elegance of the decorations or the quality of the food. It would be measured in the smile he hoped to see on Ji-yoon's face, in the moment she realized she wasn't alone in her pain. Ji-yoon hadn't planned to answer her door that afternoon. She lay curled on her couch, still wearing yesterday's clothes, when Harry's persistent knocking echoed through her apartment. The rhythmic sound continued for nearly 5 minutes before Ji-yoon finally relented, shuffling to the door with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "You look exactly how I expected," Harry announced, pushing past Ji-yoon into the apartment. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating scattered tissues and an empty ice cream container on the coffee table. Harry surveyed the scene, then turned to face her friend.
"Get dressed."
"We're going out." "I'm not in the mood for," Ji-yoon began, but Harry was already moving through the apartment with purposeful energy, pulling clothes from Ji-yoon's closet and laying them on the bed. She selected a comfortable but stylish outfit: dark jeans, a soft sweater in Ji-yoon's favorite shade of blue, and ankle boots that Ji-yoon had bought during their last shopping trip. "Your birthday is in a few hours," Harry reminded her, gentle but firm. "I refuse to let you spend it like this. Besides, I need your help with something." She paused, knowing her next words would pique Ji-yoon's interest. "I've been seeing someone and I need your advice." The revelation had its intended effect. Ji-yoon straightened slightly, her eyes focusing for the first time that day. "You're seeing someone? Since when?" The blanket slipped from her shoulders as she moved to sit on the edge of her bed, curiosity temporarily overshadowing her own heartache. Harry smiled, handing Ji-yoon the clothes she'd selected. "Get dressed, and I'll tell you everything over coffee." "Not at Blue Moon," she added quickly, seeing Ji-yoon's expression flicker. "I know this little place near the river. They make the best honey bread you've ever tasted." 30 minutes later, they walked arm in arm through the streets of Seoul. The afternoon sun had warmed the air, and cherry blossom petals drifted lazily around them. Harry led them through winding streets, past boutique windows and street vendors, keeping up a steady stream of conversation about her mysterious new romance. "He's an artist," she revealed as they waited at a crosswalk. "We met at that gallery opening last month, the one you were too busy to attend, by the way." She squeezed Ji-yoon's arm affectionately, removing any sting from her words. "He sees the world differently than anyone I've ever met. Everything is a potential masterpiece to him." Ji-yoon found herself drawn into Harry's story despite herself. "What kind of art does he create?" she asked as they turned onto a street running parallel to the Han River. The water sparkled in the distance, boats creating gentle ripples on its surface. "He works with light and shadow," Harry explained, her voice taking on a dreamy quality. "He creates installations that change depending on the time of day, the weather, the viewer's perspective. It's like he captures moments of time and transforms them into something permanent." They stopped at several shops along the way, Harry insisting that Ji-yoon try on clothes and accessories she absolutely needed. In each store, Ji-yoon noticed her friend checking her phone frequently, typing quick messages when she thought Ji-yoon wasn't looking. If she hadn't been so wrapped up in her own thoughts, she might have questioned these suspicious behaviors more closely. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the riverside path, Harry steered them toward the River Plaza building. "There's one more place I want to show you," she said, her voice carefully casual. "The view from the rooftop is incredible at sunset. My artist friend mentioned it's one of his favorite spots to sketch." Ji-yoon hesitated at the building's entrance, suddenly aware of how many hours had passed since they left her apartment. "It's getting late, Harry. Maybe we should." "Just 10 minutes," Harry promised, already pulling her friend toward the elevator. "Consider it my birthday gift to you, showing you the most beautiful sunset view in Seoul." The elevator doors closed behind them, and Harry pressed the button for the top floor, her heart racing with anticipation. As they ascended, Ji-yoon leaned against the elevator wall, reflecting on the afternoon. Despite her initial reluctance, Harry's company had provided a welcome distraction from her heartache. The stories about the artist had reminded her that love could be something beautiful and inspiring, not just a source of pain. The elevator chimed, announcing their arrival at the rooftop level. Harry stepped out first, holding the door open for Ji-yoon. "Close your eyes," she instructed, her voice trembling slightly with excitement. "Harry, what are you? Trust me. Just for a moment." Ji-yoon complied, allowing Harry to guide her forward. The evening air brushed against her face, carrying the faint scent of flowers and something else. Was that food? Before she could question it, she heard Harry take a deep breath. "Okay," her friend whispered. "Open them." As Ji-yoon opened her eyes, the rooftop exploded with light and sound. "Surprise!" Dozens of voices called out in unison. The space before her had been transformed into an enchanted garden. Strings of fairy lights created a canopy overhead, their warm glow reflecting off the glass barriers that enclosed the rooftop. Paper lanterns in soft pastels swayed gently in the evening breeze, and scattered rose petals created winding paths between elegantly arranged tables. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, providing a stunning backdrop to the Han River below. Familiar faces smiled at her from all directions, colleagues from work, friends from university, members of her art class. Even her favorite barista from the local coffee shop was there, standing near a beautifully arranged dessert table. Ji-yoon's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes for entirely different reasons than the previous day. She turned to Harry, who was beaming beside her, then back to the gathering. That's when she spotted him, Lee Min-ho, standing slightly apart from the crowd, watching her reaction with an expression that made her heart skip a beat. The live band began playing softly, the theme song from her favorite drama, she realized with a start. The melody floated through the air, mixing with the sounds of conversation and laughter. Friends began approaching, offering hugs and birthday wishes, but Ji-yoon found her gaze repeatedly drawn back to Min-ho. "You did this?" She finally managed to ask Harry, her voice barely above a whisper. Harry shook her head, nodding toward Min-ho. "He planned everything. I just helped with the details and getting you here." She gave Ji-yoon a gentle push forward. "Go talk to him. He's been nervous about this all day." Ji-yoon made her way through the crowd, accepting hugs and greetings, but moving steadily toward Min-ho. He stood near the edge of the rooftop, the city lights twinkling behind him like an extension of the fairy lights above. As she approached, he straightened his tie, a nervous gesture she'd noticed over years of friendship. "The last time you threw me a surprise party was in university," she said, stopping beside him. "When I failed that programming exam and thought my life was over." The memory brought a smile to her face despite herself. Min-ho turned to face her, his expression softening. "You needed cheering up then too. Though I had more time to plan that one, a whole day instead of just hours." He gestured toward a quieter corner of the rooftop, where comfortable chairs had been arranged around a small table. "Would you like to sit? You've been shopping with Harry all afternoon. Your feet must be tired." They settled into the chairs, the party continuing around them in a comfortable bubble of sound and movement. A server appeared with 2 glasses of champagne, setting them down before discreetly withdrawing. From this vantage point, Ji-yoon could see the entire party layout, appreciating the attention to detail that had gone into every aspect. "How did you remember all of this?" she asked, noting the strawberry shortcake on the dessert table, the specific flowers in the centerpieces, all her favorites. Even the song the band is playing. Min-ho took a sip of champagne before answering. "I pay attention," he said simply. Then, after a pause, "I've always paid attention when it comes to you, Ji-yoon." The weight of his words hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Ji-yoon found herself studying his profile, seeing him as if for the first time. The successful CEO everyone knew was there, in his perfectly tailored suit and confident posture, but she also saw the friend who had supported her through countless challenges, who somehow always knew exactly what she needed. They talked about university days, about shared memories and mutual friends. Min-ho made her laugh with stories about his early business ventures, including the spectacular failure of his first startup. As they spoke, Ji-yoon realized she was relaxing for the first time in days. the sharp pain of her recent breakup dulling to a manageable ache. "Why did you do all this?" she finally asked, gesturing to the party around them. It must have taken so much effort to arrange everything on such short notice. Minho was quiet for a moment, watching the boats move along the river below. When he turned back to her, his expression was serious. "Because you deserve to be surrounded by people who truly care about you on your birthday. Because seeing you hurt." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Let's just say I couldn't bear the thought of you spending tonight alone." The honesty in his voice touched something deep within Jiyoon, making her breath catch. Before she could respond, Harry appeared, apologizing for the interruption. "The chef wants to know if we're ready for dinner to be served," she said, looking between them with poorly concealed interest. The evening air grew cooler as dinner concluded, but the strategically placed heaters kept the rooftop comfortable. The band transitioned from background music to more prominent melodies, their sound carrying clearly across the space. The lead singer, a woman with a gentle voice, began a slow ballad that Jiyoon recognized from her favorite playlist. Around them, couples began moving to the dance floor area, their shadows merging with the pattern of lights overhead. Minho stood from their corner table, extending his hand to Jiyoon. The gesture reminded her of their university graduation ball, where he had also asked her to dance. Back then, they had laughed and joked through an upbeat song. Tonight felt different. "Would you honor me with a dance?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of nervousness that seemed at odds with his usual confidence. Jiyoon placed her hand in his, noticing how warm it felt despite the evening chill. As they walked to the dance floor, she became acutely aware of how many eyes followed their movement. Minho led her to the center of the dance floor, placing one hand respectfully at her waist while holding their joined hands at shoulder height. The proper dance frame felt both formal and intimate, maintaining a careful distance while bringing them closer than they'd been all evening. Jiyoon rested her free hand on his shoulder, feeling the expensive fabric of his suit beneath her fingers. As they began to move with the music, Jiyoon found herself relaxing into the rhythm. Minho was a surprisingly good dancer, leading her through gentle turns that made her dress swirl around her legs. The fairy lights above created patterns across his face, highlighting expressions she had never noticed before, moments of tenderness quickly hidden behind his usual composed demeanor. "I didn't know you could dance like this," she said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. A slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. "I took lessons," he admitted, guiding her through another turn. "After that graduation ball, where I stepped on your feet at least 10 times. I decided I should learn properly." The confession made Jiyoon laugh, the sound carrying across the dance floor and drawing smiles from nearby guests. The music shifted to another slow song, and they continued dancing. Jiyoon found herself moving closer, reducing the formal distance between them until she could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. The scent of his cologne mixed with the evening air, something subtle and expensive that she associated uniquely with him. "You know," she said softly, "I always wondered why you never dated anyone seriously in university. All the girls were interested in you, but you never seemed to notice." She felt him tense slightly under her hands, his steps becoming more measured. From their new proximity, she could see the subtle clench of his jaw as he considered his response. "I noticed plenty," he finally said, "just not them." The implications of his words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Around them, the party continued in full swing. Harry was dancing nearby, with a tall man Jiyoon assumed must be the artist she'd spoken about earlier. Other friends laughed and talked at their tables, the atmosphere growing more relaxed as the evening progressed. But in their corner of the dance floor, time seemed to slow down. "All these years," Jiyoon began, then paused, gathering her thoughts. "You've always been there, haven't you? Supporting me, encouraging me, but never." She trailed off, unable to complete the thought. Minho's hand tightened slightly at her waist. "It never seemed like the right time. He said quietly. "You were always either starting a relationship or ending one. I didn't want to be just a rebound or a consolation prize." His honesty struck her, making her heart race. As they turned slowly, The Han River came into view behind them, its surface reflecting the city lights like scattered stars. Ji-yoon found herself thinking about all the times Min-ho had been there for her, celebrating her successes, comforting her through failures, always a steady presence in her life. How had she never noticed the depth of feeling behind his actions? The song was drawing to a close, but neither of them moved to separate. Instead, Ji-yoon lowered her head to rest against his shoulder, closing her eyes. She felt his breath catch, his hand moving slightly on her waist in what might have been a subtle pull closer. The dance ended, but its effects lingered as Ji-yoon made her way to the refreshment table, her mind spinning with newfound awareness of Min-ho. As she reached for a glass of water, a tall man with paint-stained fingers appeared beside her. His casual attire stood out among the more formally dressed guests, but he carried himself with an artist's confident nonchalance. "You must be Ji-yoon," he said, offering a warm smile. "I'm Yoon-ho, Haeri's friend. She's told me so much about you." His eyes carried the observant quality common to artists, as though he was mentally composing a portrait of her. "Happy birthday, by the way. Though I suspect tonight has brought you more surprises than just birthday wishes." Ji-yoon found herself drawn into conversation with Joon-ho, whose perspective on life seemed refreshingly different from her usual corporate circle. He spoke about his latest installation project, an elaborate piece involving mirrors and light that changed appearance throughout the day, revealing different aspects of itself as the sun moved across the sky. "It's fascinating how things can appear so different depending on when and how you look at them," Joon-ho mused, gesturing with his glass toward the party around them. "Take this gathering, for instance. To some, it's a birthday celebration. To others..." His eyes drifted meaningfully toward Min-ho, who stood across the rooftop engaged in conversation with some guests, but glancing regularly in their direction. "Life rarely gives us clear perspectives," Joon-ho continued. "We think we're seeing the whole picture, but we're usually just catching one angle, one moment in time. The trick is knowing when to shift your position, to look at things from a new vantage point." He smiled at Ji-yoon's thoughtful expression. "Sometimes the most beautiful view is the one we've been too afraid to seek." The conversation stirred something in Ji-yoon's heart. She found herself thinking about her recent breakup, about Min-ho's revelation during their dance, about all the moments she might have missed by maintaining the same perspective for too long. The city lights sparkled behind them, each one representing a different story, a different possibility. From across the rooftop, Min-ho watched their interaction with poorly concealed concern. He maintained his smile as he spoke with guests, but his eyes frequently returned to Ji-yoon and Joon-ho's animated conversation. The artist's casual charm and evident intelligence seemed to have captured Ji-yoon's attention completely, and Min-ho felt the weight of years of unspoken feelings pressing against his chest. "The heart knows what it wants," Joon-ho said suddenly, pulling Ji-yoon from her thoughts. "But sometimes the mind needs time to catch up. Take my latest piece. I knew exactly what I wanted to create, but it took months of preparation, of understanding light and reflection, before I could begin. Some things can't be rushed, even when we know their direction." Ji-yoon nodded, understanding flowing between them. "How did you know?" she asked. "With your art, I mean. How did you know it was what you were meant to do?" Joon-ho's answer came with the certainty of someone who had found their truth. "Because it was always there, in everything I did, everything I saw. Even when I tried other paths, art remained constant, waiting for me to acknowledge it." He glanced meaningfully at Min-ho again. "Some things are like that, persistent, patient, lasting through all our other choices until we're ready to see them clearly." The weight of the conversation settled around Ji-yoon like a comfortable shawl. She found herself watching Min-ho with new eyes, seeing not just the successful CEO or the reliable friend, but something more complex, a story she had been part of without fully understanding its narrative. The evening had reached that magical hour when the city lights fully emerged, creating a glittering backdrop against the dark sky. Min-ho signaled to the staff, who began distributing paper lanterns to all the guests. Each lantern was crafted from delicate rice paper, decorated with hand-painted cherry blossoms, a detail he had specifically requested, remembering how Ji-yoon once mentioned they symbolized new beginnings. The band softened their music to a gentle instrumental piece as servers helped guests light their lanterns. Ji-yoon stood near the rooftop's edge, holding her unlit lantern and watching the preparation with growing emotion. The paper felt delicate between her fingers, its surface warm from her touch. Minho approached her, holding a long lighter. "May I?" he asked softly. Ji-yoon nodded, holding her lantern steady as he carefully lit the small fuel cell within. The lantern began to glow from within, casting a warm light across their faces. Around them, other lanterns came to life, creating a constellation of earthbound stars. Harry's voice carried across the rooftop, instructing everyone to prepare for the release. Ji-yoon felt Minho's presence close behind her, his breath warm against her ear as he spoke. "Make a wish," he whispered, his own lantern glowing beside hers. Ji-yoon closed her eyes, feeling the gentle pull of the lantern as it filled with warm air. In this moment, surrounded by light and friendship, the pain of her recent breakup felt distant, replaced by something new and undefined. Her wish, when it came, surprised her, not for her ex to return, but for the courage to embrace change. "Ready," Harry called out. 3, 2, 1. The lanterns rose into the night sky in a synchronized dance of light and hope. Ji-yoon watched as her lantern joined the others, creating a river of light that mirrored the Han River below. The sight brought unexpected tears to her eyes, not of sadness, but of something closer to wonder. Minho's hand found hers in the darkness, his fingers intertwining with hers naturally, as though they had done this 1,000 times before. The touch sent warmth spreading through her arm, settling somewhere near her heart. They stood in silence, watching the lanterns drift higher, carrying wishes and dreams into the night sky. "Ji-yoon." Minho's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried clearly in the hushed atmosphere. "I need to tell you something." He turned to face her, their joined hands between them like a bridge. The city lights reflected in his eyes, showing a vulnerability she had never seen in him before. "I've loved you since university," he continued, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "Not just as a friend, though your friendship has meant everything to me. I've loved you through all your relationships, through every success and failure, through every moment when I wanted to speak, but couldn't find the right words." Ji-yoon felt her heart racing, the world narrowing to just this moment, just his words and the warmth of his hand in hers. The lanterns continued their ascent above them, their light creating a golden glow that seemed to suspend time itself. "I'm not telling you this because you're vulnerable right now," Minho added quickly, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her hand. "I'm telling you because watching you hurt yesterday made me realize that life is too short for unspoken truths. You deserve to know that you are loved, completely and unconditionally, even if you're not ready to hear it." The honesty in his voice, the years of patient waiting evident in every word, struck Ji-yoon with overwhelming force. She felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but made no move to wipe them away. Instead, she watched the play of emotions across Minho's face: hope, fear, determination, and above all, a love so profound it took her breath away. The party began winding down as midnight approached, guests departing in small groups until only a handful remained. Ji-yoon sat at the edge of the rooftop garden, wrapped in a cashmere shawl that Harry had thoughtfully provided. The weight of Minho's confession settled around her like the evening mist rising from the river below. Minho had given her space after his revelation, understanding without words that she needed time to process everything. He busied himself thanking departing guests and overseeing the cleanup, though his eyes frequently sought her out, each glance carrying the weight of years of unspoken feelings. Harry approached, settling beside Ji-yoon with 2 cups of hot tea. "You're overthinking," she said softly, pressing one of the cups into Ji-yoon's hands. The warmth seeped through her fingers, grounding her in the present moment. "How can I not?" Ji-yoon responded, watching the steam rise from her cup. "Everything I thought I knew about my life, about Minho, about our friendship, it's all shifted. It's like looking at a familiar painting and suddenly seeing entirely new colors." The city continued its nighttime symphony below them, car horns, distant music, the gentle lapping of the river against its banks. These familiar sounds provided a strange comfort as Jiyoon sorted through her tumbling thoughts. "I can't just jump into something new," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not when I can still feel the bruises from my last relationship. And Minho, he's too important to risk becoming just a rebound, a way to forget the pain." Harry listened patiently, her presence providing silent support. "Nobody's asking you to jump," she finally said. "Least of all Minho. He's waited years. Do you really think he'd push you now?" Jiyoon's gaze drifted to where Minho stood across the rooftop, his tall figure silhouetted against the city lights. He was speaking with the band members as they packed up, his natural leadership evident even in this simple interaction. How many times had she watched him like this, admiring his quiet confidence without fully understanding what lay beneath it? "I need time," Jiyoon said firmly, though her heart fluttered as Minho glanced their way. "Time to heal, to understand what I really want. These feelings, they're too new, too tangled with everything else." Harry nodded, understanding flowing between them. "Then take time. Real love, the kind that's waited years to be spoken, can wait a little longer to be answered." As if sensing their conversation had reached its conclusion, Minho approached slowly, his manner careful and respectful. "The cars are here," he said softly. "May I drive you home?" Jiyoon stood, gathering her shawl more tightly around her shoulders. "I think I'll ride with Harry tonight," she replied, watching pain flicker briefly across his features before understanding replaced it. "But Minho, thank you. For everything. For this beautiful evening. For your honesty. For—" She paused, struggling to encompass everything she felt grateful for. He saved her from finishing, offering a gentle smile that spoke of patience and understanding. "Take all the time you need," he said quietly. "I've carried these feelings for years. They won't fade overnight. Whatever you decide, whenever you decide it, I'll be here." The weeks following the birthday party settled into an uncertain rhythm. Jiyoon found herself meeting regularly with Junho, the artist, though not in the way Minho feared. They would sit for hours in his studio, surrounded by half-finished installations, discussing the nature of change and transformation. Junho's artistic perspective helped her see her situation through different lenses, each conversation revealing new layers of understanding. "Love isn't static," Junho explained one afternoon, adjusting mirrors in his latest installation. "It's like light, constantly moving, changing angles, creating new patterns. Sometimes we need to step back to see the full picture." His words resonated with Jiyoon as she watched the light dance across the studio walls, creating ever-shifting patterns. Meanwhile, Minho threw himself into his work with renewed intensity. His company was launching a new technology platform, demanding long hours and constant attention. Yet employees noticed their CEO's gaze frequently drifting to the window overlooking the city, particularly toward the Blue Moon Cafe, where everything had begun. The corporate world of Seoul continued its relentless pace around them. Jiyoon excelled at her job in marketing, earning a promotion that would normally have been cause for celebration. In the past, Minho would have been the first person she called with such news. Now, the notification sat unshared on her phone, a small symbol of their current distance. Their paths crossed occasionally at industry events, each encounter charged with unspoken words. Minho maintained his promise of patience, never pushing, but his eyes followed her movements with an intensity that made her heart race. They would exchange polite conversation, their professional masks hiding the turmoil beneath, while their friends watched with barely concealed interest. One rainy evening, Jiyoon found herself standing outside Minho's office building, sheltering under an awning as she waited for a taxi. A sleek black car pulled up, and Minho emerged, stopping short when he saw her. The rain created a curtain of silver around them, muffling the city sounds and creating an intimate bubble in the gathering darkness. "Let me drive you home," he offered, his voice carrying above the rain. When she hesitated, he added, "Please, as a friend." The word friend carried a weight it had never held before, heavy with everything that had changed between them. The drive through rain-slick streets was filled with careful conversation about work, mutual friends, and the changing seasons. Neither mentioned the party or his confession, but both felt their presence in every careful pause, every unfinished sentence. As they neared her apartment, a familiar song played softly on the car radio, the same one they had danced to at the party. Ji-yoon watched Minho's hands tighten slightly on the steering wheel, knowing he recognized it too. The moment stretched between them, filled with everything they weren't saying. "I miss you," Minho finally said, his voice barely audible above the rain and the radio. Not just in the way I confessed. I miss my friend." The simple honesty of his words struck deeper than any elaborate declaration could have. Ji-yoon felt tears prickling at her eyes, understanding exactly what he meant. In trying to protect their friendship from the complexity of his confession, they had inadvertently strained it. The distance they'd maintained, meant to provide clarity, had only highlighted how integral they were to each other's lives. An unexpected autumn rain had transformed Seoul's streets into mirrors reflecting the city lights when Ji-yoon received a text from her ex-boyfriend. He was back in the city for an art exhibition and wanted to meet, claiming he had something important to tell her. After a moment's hesitation, she agreed, choosing a neutral cafe far from their old haunts. The cafe was quiet when he arrived, looking much the same as she remembered, but somehow less significant. He settled across from her, cheating with his coffee cup before speaking. "I need to explain why I really left," he began, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note of regret. "It wasn't just about my art career. It was about Minho." Ji-yoon felt her world tilt slightly.
Minho?
What does he have to do with this? The truth emerged slowly, each word reshaping her understanding of the past. Minho, it turned out, had been more than just a successful CEO. He was also a respected patron of the arts, anonymously supporting promising artists through his foundation. Her ex-boyfriend had discovered this connection at a gallery opening, realizing that the mysterious benefactor who had offered him a career-changing opportunity in New York was none other than Minho. "I couldn't handle it," her ex admitted, staring into his coffee. "Knowing that my success would come through him, seeing how he looked at you, understanding that his support probably had more to do with you than my talent. My pride couldn't take it. So I ran." The revelation hit Ji-yoon like a physical force. All those times Minho had asked about her ex-boyfriend's art, his careful questions about their relationship, he had been silently supporting her happiness even when it meant watching her build a life with someone else. Without a word, Ji-yoon gathered her things and left the cafe, her feet carrying her toward Minho's office building through the rain. The security guard, recognizing her from years of visits, let her up without question. She found Minho in his office, silhouetted against the window as he often was, watching the city below. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice breaking the silence. He turned, surprise flickering across his face before understanding settled in. "About the Art Foundation, about offering him the opportunity in New York?" Minho moved away from the window, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she had only seen once before, during his confession at the party. "Because his talent was genuine and he made you happy. Those were the only things that mattered. You were willing to help him succeed, to support his career, even knowing it meant watching me build a life with him." The magnitude of his selflessness struck her anew. "I told you at the party, I've loved you completely and unconditionally," Minho said softly. "That means wanting your happiness, even if it doesn't include me." Something shifted in Ji-yoon's heart at that moment, as though the final piece of a puzzle had fallen into place. All the time she'd spent processing her feelings, trying to separate past from present, friendship from love, it all crystallized into perfect clarity. She crossed the office slowly, each step carrying the weight of years of unspoken feelings, missed opportunities, and patient waiting. Standing before Minho, she saw not just the successful CEO or the reliable friend, but the man who had loved her so completely that he had put her happiness above his own at every turn. "I'm ready," she said simply, reaching for his hand. "I've taken my time, sorted through every feeling, examined every fear. And I've realized something. You've been my constant, my true north, through everything. Not just these past weeks, but for years. I was so afraid of risking our friendship that I almost missed the chance at something extraordinary. Minho's hand trembled slightly as it found hers, their fingers intertwining as naturally as they had the night of the party. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the first stars were becoming visible in the clearing sky. Through the window, they could see the Han River reflecting the city lights. Much like it had on the night everything changed. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice carrying years of careful hope. Instead of answering, Ji-yoon rose on her tiptoes and kissed him, pouring into the gesture everything she couldn't express in words: gratitude for his patience, appreciation for his unwavering support, and most importantly, love that had been growing unnoticed for years, waiting for the right moment to bloom. As they stood together in his office, the city spreading out below them like a sea of stars, both understood that this wasn't just an ending to their story, but a beginning. One built on years of friendship, understanding, and a love that had been strong enough to wait for its moment to shine.